All right, folks, welcome back to another episode of Bitcoinomics. Today, we have a very special guest sitting across. We have Zach Pandl, the head of research at Grayscale Investments. So, for those of you who don't know, Grayscale is the world's largest digital currency asset manager and a true pioneer in the space. And they're actually the first to introduce a Bitcoin investment trust all the way back in 2013. So, Zach brings a traditional finance perspective to the crypto world. And before joining Grayscale, he worked as a macroeconomist and market strategist at major Wall Street firms, including Goldman Sachs, Nomura Securities, Lehman Brothers, and he has a bachelor's in international economics from the University of St. Thomas and a master's in economics from NYU. So, welcome to the show, Zach. Really appreciate you being here. Anything you want to
It's
add
my
before we get
pleasure.
started?
Yeah, my pleasure, Ridwan. Great to be on with you. Looking forward to this discussion today.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. So, diving right into it, as you've had a pretty interesting career trajectory, going from traditional finance powerhouses like Lehman Brothers and Goldman Sachs to leading the research at Grayscale. So, can you walk us a little bit through that journey and what is kind of the catalyst for that switch?
Yeah, absolutely. You're right. Before full-time crypto, I did about 20 years as a economist or macro strategist on Wall Street. And really what that means, I'm taking concepts from macroeconomics and applying them to the study of different economies and to markets, and trying to think about how a variety of asset classes will behave given the outlook for the economy as a whole. And so this can be things like the bond market, currency markets, commodity markets, equity markets, essentially as a kind of top-down or macro investing style. So I was doing that type of work, covering lots of different asset classes at different financial institutions over the years. And at some point during that journey, I decided for myself that Bitcoin and the crypto asset class were really the most compelling investment opportunity among all of those things, among bonds, currencies, other commodities, stocks, etc. And really, I was just applying the same type of macro investing lens that I had been applying to other asset classes and thinking about what were the big issues at play, what were the kind of mega trends likely to be driving different asset classes. And we'll get into all that in today's discussion, but at a very kind of zoomed out level, it was two big things. One is on the macro side, it's this issue of government deficits and debt. We really have uncontrollable deficits and debt. These are bipartisan, deeply intractable problems and really are not going anywhere. And the question for investors, what does that mean for your assets? What does that mean for your portfolios? And to me, that means scarce commodities, whether that's something like gold or something like Bitcoin. And then the other kind of mega trend is more closely related to our asset class, and that's just the implications of public blockchain technology in general. Bitcoin is one important part of the asset class, obviously the largest asset in crypto by a significant margin still today. But public blockchain technology, in my view, is going to really change the whole financial system, transform the way that we conduct finance and reduce the centralized role of intermediaries. And as that thesis plays out over the next 5, 10, 20, 30 years, in my view, Bitcoin as a store of value asset or as a currency will have huge tailwinds as well. So I put these two things together. Huge debt imbalances and secular growth of public blockchain technologies. And for me, it just became the most compelling thing to do with my time and my capital was to be all in on Bitcoin and crypto. So really that's the story. And I have never looked back, to be honest.
That's pretty amazing, especially coming from a traditional finance background. So when you started, so it's interesting you took that exact same lens, applied it to Bitcoin, makes total sense, at least to me. But then when you started talking to your colleagues and friends about it, what was their reaction? Especially, I got to know, what was their reaction to all this initially?
Look, I would say it's a wide range of reactions depending on the person, but certainly plenty of them thought I was nuts. And look, I think it is just a question of education, really. I think everybody will come around. This is just technology and a new set of assets, but it does require a certain type of perspective. And I think I was fortunate to have, for whatever reason, the right combination of experience that made it a little bit easier for me to understand all the dimensions. And there's different pieces to that. Maybe I'll share a couple of examples. But
Yes.
one would be something like starting my career at Lehman Brothers and thinking
Yes.
hard about the vulnerabilities of the financial system, and also how government policy responded to all those events during the financial crisis. So that was, of course, formative in thinking about these things. I think some of it was running the currency strategy effort at Goldman Sachs and traveling all around the world and talking about crypto with people on every corner of the planet, and just sort of realizing the kind of scope of this project. And I think it was also, my work getting to know some of the institutions in crypto at a professional level, and understanding that there's a lot of really high quality people, a lot of high quality businesses in crypto with all the best intentions to kind of follow the rules and build great products within the kind of regulated U.S. Financial systems. It was really that kind of range of experience that helped me, I think, see the picture as a whole, if you will. Now, when people kind of object to crypto, they have lots of different angles that they are coming from. Some of it are questions about money and how Bitcoin kind of fits into those concepts of how people think about money. Some of it is about investing and where investment returns come from over time. Some people very focused on cash flows and are uncomfortable investing in commodities of any kind, certainly digital commodities. And there's lots of other things related to regulation and other things. So there's lots of types of objections. We find in our work in Grayscale that we just work investors through those things. We take every one of those questions over and over again, help people understand, and that tends to kind of lower their concern level, raise their enthusiasm level about where the asset class is going, and then ultimately leading to allocate capital. Not everybody has to go straight into the deep end like I did, but we do want to see most investors participate in what's happening in this space.
No, and that's honestly amazing to hear, especially the work that you guys are doing at Grayscale, because you guys are that bridge between institutional investors and crypto, right? I actually invested in you guys several years back. Because I was looking for the ETF and whatnot, there's no ETF, and I was like, oh, like there's Grayscale Trust, and I remember looking into it, I was like, what is Grayscale Trust? I was like, oh, like they have a Bitcoin trust. Great, good enough for me. So, no, I really do appreciate the work that you guys have done. Right. So curious.
It's been a long journey for Grayscale. The title of the new movie goes, one battle after another. It hasn't been straightforward to operate a business in crypto in the United States over the last 12 years plus for Grayscale. But, we have, I think, been an important piece of the story, moving the industry and asset class forward over time.
But you guys 1,000% have been. I mean, I heard of you guys several years back. You guys are obviously a massive player right now. So take us through that journey as far as when you joined Grayscale, where you guys were at then, where you're at now, and then where you see yourself going in the next, let's say 5-10 years.
Yeah, that's a great question, Ridwan. Look, let me take you back to that time where, there were no Bitcoin ETFs at all. What we could offer to investors was what people call in textbook finance a closed-end fund structure, but these sort of trust products that have premiums and discounts and things like that, which you're familiar with. And we weren't able to bring an ETF. People had filed for an ETF, requested an ETF all the way back in 2013, but that wasn't allowed by regulators. And Grayscale actually had to take the effort of suing the SEC in order to kind of force the issue. We won that lawsuit, and that's why we have Bitcoin ETFs at all. So you take us back to that kind of period, no ETF products whatsoever, and lawsuits, and kind of really challenging environment with the regulators for anybody operating, asset managers like Grayscale, exchanges, software developers. I think everybody facing a really challenging time. And then you think about where we are in the present. You have dozens of ETF products. They have seen wild success in terms of investor demand. We continue to expand the available products. It began with Bitcoin ETFs back in January 2024, but then shortly thereafter, Ethereum ETFs, and now we have a Solana ETF, an XRP ETF, a Dogecoin ETF, a Chainlink ETF. And you will see more and more of these products available. We've also been able to expand what we are doing in these sort of vehicles, incorporating staking, for example. Grayscale today, we are the only asset manager staking our Ethereum ETFs at scale.
That's amazing.
for example. We've been able to introduce options strategies into this product. And then beyond the kind of Grayscale business, you've had a huge improvement in regulatory clarity really throughout the industry. Things like the Genius Act on stablecoins last year were a big step forward. Lots of changes at the regulatory agencies, CFTC, SEC, even the OCC and Federal Reserve, all making kind of policy changes of one kind or another to help the industry move forward. So it's been a huge amount of progress, and that's kind of the present day of the industry. I would say greatly improved, but we have really a long way to go, frankly. I still see us in a somewhat immature stage as a crypto industry and asset class in the United States, and Grayscale has enormous scope to continue to innovate in this space, and really the next chapter for the industry as well as for an asset manager like Grayscale is about on-chain. The vision is not just to give access to Ethereum to investors. It's to move the financial system onto the blockchain. That's where we're going. Through tokenization, stable coins, decentralized finance, we're going to move all of that on chain eventually, or at least a huge portion of the financial system. And for an asset manager, that means we got to go on chain as well. That means tokenizing products and thinking about what it means to operate in a kind of postmodern financial system where public blockchains are at the center. So that's a bit of a sketch of the story. I would say we've gone from let's say one battle after another kind of environment, prior to 2024 or so, to a flourishing ETF market with a lot of improved regulatory clarity and huge strides happening on things like stable coins and other use cases. But we are still very far short of the ultimate vision. We are only a very small increment in what I think is transpiring in this new technology. So I'm just as enthusiastic about the forward as I was several years ago when I joined Grayscale.
This is amazing to hear, just because you guys are continuing on that trajectory. A lot of companies you'll see, okay, we achieved this, kind of slow down and whatnot, but you guys are just going. You guys are always innovating and just going. So take us through that journey of. So you're talking about going on chain. So this is something that Grayscale is currently working on. You guys would build out your own blockchain, or what would that look like?
Well, I think unlikely that we would build a blockchain, but look, I think when we need to kind of think about where the industry is going and what that means for our business. And the ETFs were a huge part of that, and they continue to be a huge part of that. And again, as I said, we will continue to innovate in traditional investment products like ETFs and other things. We have a private funds business for accredited investors as well. We will continue to innovate in that space. But if you really believe, of course, in the premise of public blockchain technology and where it's going, you have to look in the mirror and say, what does this mean for us? We are a financial intermediary as well. We're not a bank or a custodian. We're a financial intermediary, and we need to think about what that means for us. And this will be a long journey. I'm going to be working on this stuff for 10, 15, 20 years. But what I think of what it means is that eventually, we'll have most assets, most securities, stocks, bonds, traditional assets in tokenized form on public blockchain ledgers.
Okay.
And therefore, for an asset manager like Grayscale, our job is to provide investment access products and other types of investment vehicles to investors to help them achieve their investment goals through investment products. And so for us, that means we need to probably go where the innovation is and think about distributing our products potentially on-chain in tokenized form and other types of related strategies. Now, this will take time. There's a chicken and egg problem or innovator's dilemma problem that you see in lots of places where investors have to be on chain in order to buy these assets, and they need products there in order to be willing to go on chain. So we have some classic innovation challenges just like in any industry, but that's the direction of travel for the financial system, and therefore it has to be the direction of travel for any financial intermediary, including Grayscale.
Understood. Okay. So this makes a lot of sense. So this is long-term vision. And the fact that you said you're going to be working on this for 10, 15 years, you are committed. You're staying at Grayscale, committed to doing this. This is amazing, because this is what's necessary within the environment and what is required for Bitcoin cryptocurrencies to be taken to the masses.
Yeah, I think, people say when you join the asset class or when you kind of study blockchain technology closely, it's like seeing the matrix, you can't unsee it. Once you kind of understand the vision of what we are working on, I think it's hard to imagine going back to the world of intermediated bank balance sheet based finance.
That's totally fair.